time I spoke about 3 ways that the I can be perceived. And some years ago, when I taught that, a person thought there was 3 I or 3 persona, you know, 3 personality, like Dr. Jenkins and Mr. Hyde, you know, that you have 3 different persona within yourself, you know. So it's not not like that, right? So it's not like you have a mischievous self, the inherent I, and then you have a pure I, the merely label one, you know, and then a neutral one, you know. So it's not like that. So I think it's more like water, you know. Sometimes water can be seen as ice, sometimes as water, and sometimes as vapor. So the same phenomena can be perceived differently, you know. So the distinction is actually quite subtle. So when we meditate on emptiness of the I, so first of all, why we meditate more on the selflessness of person than other phenomena is because it says it's easier to realize emptiness of the self than of other phenomena, even though it seems to be easier to understand on outer phenomena, but to get the experience is easier on the person. So that's why one starts with that. But when we meditate on the emptiness of the person, one doesn't worry so much about the one that is neither inherent existent and the one that is, you know, so the neutral one, the one that is neither inherently existent nor merely labeled, that one doesn't concern oneself so much. The one we try to identify is the inherent existent one. And the inherent existent one, what is his base? On what does the inherent existent I appear? So the inherent existent I appear on, the inherent existent I appear on the merely label I. Right? And the merely label I appear on the base of the 5 aggregate. So in the evolution, if we could slow down the process, we would see first is the base, the 5 aggregate, or at least 1 aggregate, right? And on that base, then we merely label I. And then on that merely label I, we add inherent existence, right? So like when we use the letter A, first you have the base, the tree line, and on top of the tree line you merely label I, and then the mind, our ignorance, misconception, then see an inherent existent A, right, letter. So same thing with a book. First there is the base, you know, the collection of pages and cover, and then on that you merely label book, but then on top of that, then you add this inherent existent book, right? So same thing on the base of our aggregates. There's the merely label I, which is completely valid. But on top of that, we gloss over this inherent concept of I, which actually is not there at all. But we kind of see that one and we identify with that one. So when we meditate on emptiness, so if you take the letter A, right? So there's the base, the 3 strokes, on which is the merely label A, and then is the inherent A that you try to identify, right? So you try to isolate the inherent A, and then you try to see that this inherent A is not found, right? So this inherent A is not found in any of the three strokes individually, nor the three strokes together, nor separate. And then you come to this absence of this inherent A, which is emptiness, right? But then when you come, so at that moment, the only thing that appears to your mind is emptiness, right? The emptiness of the A. But when you come out of that insight to the emptiness of the A and you come back to the conventional level, then you are left with the merely labeled A that is merely imputed on the three strokes. So that one you haven't negated, right? Because if you negate that one, then you fall into nihilism. There's no A at all, right? So you don't go there. So you have to understand that the A that you have negated is the one that you imputed on top of the merely labeled A. Okay, so same thing with the book, right? So when you don't find the inherent existent book, so at that moment when you look for the book, you don't find it in the cover, in the page, nor all together, nor separate. So you have this absence of the inherent book that appear to your mind, right? But then when you come out of that insight or that absorption to the emptiness of the book, you're left with the merely labeled book, the one that is merely imputed on the collection of parts that is able to perform the function. So that one you haven't negated. So same thing with the person, right? So on the base of the five aggregates, there's the merely labeled I, and on top of the merely labeled I, sometimes there's this inherent existent I that appear. So in meditation on emptiness, you try to, how to say, taste or isolate or understand or identify or really feel this inherent I, right? And so you try to hold it there and then say, look, where are you? And you try to find him in the five aggregates or the body-mind or separate or one of that. Then you find that this inherent I is not there at all, right? And then you stay in that absence of this inherent I. So that would be emptiness, right? But then when you come out of that insight or that absorption, you're left with the merely labeled I. So that one you haven't negated. And that merely labeled I has a continuum since beginningless lives, and that merely labeled I will reach enlightenment. And a Buddha say, I am Manjushri, I'm Maitreya, right? So he has a merely labeled I. His Holiness say, I'm Dalai Lama, I'm Tenzin Gyatso. And then another thing Nagarjuna says, you see, is because we have a subtle perception of the aggregates as being inherently existent. So on the base of seeing the aggregate as inherently existent, that's the base on which we see the self as inherently existent. So first is the base. So we perceive the aggregate as inherently existent. Then when we look at the self, we also see him as inherently existent. And then on the base of the inherently existent self, we create karma and we are stuck in cyclic existence. So I think in meditation, it is helpful sometimes if you start by focusing on the aggregates and you loosen up, you grip as them as inherently existent. And then when you come to the self, it's much easier. You see, if you see the body as merely label and then the mind as merely label, then it's quite easy to see the I as merely label. No. Because if you see the body as inherently existent, the mind as inherently existent, then the self will also be quite inherently existent. And then if you look for the inherent self, you try to negate this inherent self, but then still the body and mind are inherently existent, then you're left with the I being the mind, or being awareness, right? Because that's still there, right? And it's still inherently existent. Anyway, that one I wanted just to finish from what I spoke last session. Today I'm inspired to say something else, which is not completely related. There's a text that I like very much, the Uttara Tantra from Maitreya, the sublime continuum of the Mahayana. There, Maitreya explains that it is very important, very precious to have this feeling that we have Buddha nature, that we have the Buddha potential. And he says, whoever has that faith that he has this Buddha nature, this pure nature, it's so rich, he says that person, he gives example of countless jewels, things like that. So to have that feeling that I have this Buddha nature, that I can become Buddha, is just amazing. You see, we brought up in a Judeo-Christian culture, and we think that inside, something in us is bad, something in us is not clean, is not pure. And somehow we often identify with our negativity, with our limitation, and think, oh, yes, I might become Buddha, but I don't really believe I can do it, or at least not in this life. You see, we put this, unconsciously, we put this limitation on ourselves, right? As if Buddhahood is something very, very far away, we don't realize that Buddha nature is right now here inside. We think it will take a long time in the future. We don't have that feeling that Buddha nature is right here now. So Maitreya use different images, like you see a golden Buddha statue wrapped up in dirty clothes, right? So that's how we perceive ourselves, we are these dirty clothes with our mental affliction, our problem, our worries, and things like that. Yet there's this pure golden statue inside, and we don't recognize this pure nature in us, right? And sometimes we don't even believe really that we have it, because we're so obscured with our ego grasping and hopes and fear and so forth. And another image that Maitreya gives is like in a house, there's a treasure, right? But that family doesn't know there's a treasure there, so it lives very poor. Or let's say you inherited a house and the house is falling apart, you cannot pay your mortgage and things like that. You inherited that house from your grandmother and you're very poor. And you don't know that your grandmother stacked all these bills in her mattresses, so you have thousands of dollars in that mattress, but you're not aware of it, so you live like a poor person, yet you have maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars in your house that you're not aware of. So same thing, I think, to have this faith that our mind is fundamentally pure and it can, and there's a way to touch it, you see, and that touching the purity of a mind is not, you don't need to go somewhere. It's not found outside, you cannot find in a book, you cannot find in by traveling somewhere. It's where it resides is within yourself. So what one can say is, okay, one's body is pervaded by one's mind, and one's mind is pervaded, so to say, by pure awareness. And this pure awareness realized as empty of inherent existence. That's our Buddha nature. So we have to have this confidence that it's there. You have to, how to say, fine-tune your awareness. So from the body, you go to mind, and from mind you go to pure awareness. And then from pure awareness, you try to see it as empty of any inherent existence. And then no more subject and object separation. So you start with the body, and then your body is pervaded by your mind. So here mind would be the 5 sense consciousness and the gross mental consciousness. And then you would try to go from there to a more subtle level of consciousness. So that this gross mind is pervaded by a subtle mind. So in Tantra, one would say the mind of white appearance, red increase, black near plain, and clear light. But in Sutra, you don't have that language. So you just imagine a more refined level of consciousness pervading the grosser consciousness. And you can even imagine it in a nature of light and bliss. And then that you try to perceive as not being solid, tangible, but as mere imputed by mind. So that pure awareness is a stream of moments. It's not permanent, it's not unchanging. And each moment of awareness, you can split it up so you don't find a solid objective mind. Mind is merely imputed on all this collection of moments that you cannot find. Then when you finish that, you try to absorb into that experience. So the subject, your subjective awareness, try to merge with the object, emptiness, bliss, light. So that would be taking inner refuge. Taking refuge in our own Buddha nature, our own Buddha potential. So the outer refuge, the Guru Yoga, the Lamrim, Tantra, they are all methods to remove the veil, the obscuration, to reveal ourselves, our inner blissful, omniscient mind. And because we don't taste that, we always look outside. We get busybody. We do all these activities and look for happiness. Yet the happiness is found within. All right, so we do Namasankappa Guru Yoga. So when you take refuge in the inner gurus, inner merit field, your own Buddha nature, then the outer gurus, the outer Buddhas, the outer merit field, they are in the same space of Dharmakaya. So you see, the deeper or the more subtle you're able to experience your mind, your consciousness, then the Buddhas you imagine are in the same level of subtlety of mind. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. By my virtuous actions of giving and so on, may I become a Buddha to benefit all beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. By my virtuous actions of giving and so on, may I become a Buddha to benefit all beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. By my virtuous actions of giving and so on, may I become a Buddha to benefit all beings. So you imagine that the merit field is pleased with you, and wave of light energy enters into you, and you receive a refuge protection. So that refuge protection is a protection against your own mental affliction, your own distractions. Then now try to imagine that you leave your body by the top of your head and that you sit above yourself. And then imagine yourself surrounded by a multitude of living beings, like at a music festival, or in a big crowd. And then look at yourself and see how much you want to be happy, how much you don't want to have problems. Then realize that it's exactly the same thing for each and every one else. Of all this big crowd, if you zoom into any one of them, they all want to be happy and not have problems, and they have their own concerns, etc., their own preoccupation. And it is true for all the animals, all the peoples in the hell, preta, devas, asuras, form realm, formless realm. So any sentient beings is like me, just wants to be happy, not want a problem. So we all are equally the same. And in the Lama Chopa Lamrim prayer, it says, once you realize that, then you try to rejoice in other beings' happiness. And another verse says, it's because we're not aware of all living beings, we're so focused on oneself, my happiness, my problem. We're not aware of all living beings, we're just aware of ourselves. and mostly concerned about me. And that's the cause of our mental affliction, of our negative karma, and of our suffering. So the Bodhisattva and the Buddhas, they changed that mind. So instead of being overly focused on themselves, they focus their mind on all living beings. And I'm just one, and they are infinite in number. So by giving up one's extra concern for self and switch that mind to be concerned for all living beings, that state of mind becomes bodhicitta and then becomes the omniscient mind. So there is no other way to become enlightened but to give up that over concern for self and expand one's heart mind to embrace all living being. And then to make that experience more potent, one imagine that one inhales the problem of other, and one exhales one's peace, one's joy, one's clear light, one's pure experience, and one offers it to other. May all beings have equanimity, free of attachment and aversion. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings find good rebirth and the bliss of liberation. May the ground everywhere be pure, free of roughness and all flaws, soft as the palm of a child's hand, smooth as polished blue sapphire. So this verse, like in Tantra, you would transform everything into a pure land. Here in the sutra context, it's more like you try to clean your mind, you clean your room, you clean your mental space. So then when you invite a guest, you first clean the place. So it's like cleaning your room, cleaning your mind to be able to receive Lama Tsongkhapa as a precious guest. And then the next verse, not only do you clean the place, but you make it beautiful. You decorate it with flower and so forth. So same thing, you create some kind of pure light space in your mind with loving kindness and joy, in anticipation to receive the presence of Lama Tsongkhapa. May all space with Samatha Bhadras, clouds of offering be filled, offerings human and divine, both actual and imagined. Om Namo Bhagavate Vajrasana Bhagavate Samyak Sambuddhaya Dayada Om Vaja Vaja Ma Vaja Ma Deva Vaja Ma Vidya Ma Bodhicitta Vaja Ma Bodhi Madhava Sakana Savakama Avarana Vijudana Vaja Yutsa Om Namo Bhagavate Vajrasana Namo Bhagavate Arade Samyak Sambuddhaya Dayada Om Vaja Vaja Ma Desa Vajama Vidya Vajama Bodhicitta Ma Bodhi Mando Pasam Kamana Vajasava Kamana Vijana Om Namo Bhagavate Vajasana Arade Samyak Sambuddhaya Dayada Vajama Desa Vajama Vidya Vajama Bodhicitta Vajama Ma Bodhi Mando Pasam Kamana Vajasava Kamana So in the space in front, we try to imagine Maitreya Pure Land, Tushita. Like a beautiful park. And in the center, there's a rainbow palace in which sits many of our gurus, like Lama Tsongkhapa, Atishas, and lamas that have passed away. And in the center sits Maitreya. So you try to feel that they see you and they're very happy. And you feel their presence like when you with His Holiness, Dalai Lama, or any Lama that you had been in presence with. Then from the heart of Maitreya comes a cloud to the space in front of you in your room. And then that cloud comes Lama Tsongkhapa, Kyasabje, Kedrupje. So you try to see them sitting in your room at the level of your eye and about a body span in front of you, life size. So to visualize, usually if you keep the eyes completely closed, it doesn't work so well. And if you have the eye completely open, also visualization doesn't come so well. If you leave your eye just slightly open so that some light comes in, then it's easier to visualize. And the main thing is not so much the visualization, but is to feel that they're really present with you. It's more at the emotional level that you feel their presence. You emanate on snow white cloud from the heart of Buddha Maitreya, Savior of 100 Devas joyful, no Sandra Paul, knowing King of Dharma, with you to her disciples. I beseech you, please come before me. In space on lion throne, Lord to send my kind Guru smiling within is the supreme field for my faithful mind. Please forever abide and teach us. Your holy man knows all phenomena. You fluent speech, a sweet melody. For the years of fortunate being, your form resplendent with fame's glory. I prostrate to you is meaningful to see, hear, and also bring to mind. Pure water and well-arranged flower, fragrant incense like perfume and myrrh. Clouds of offering, real and imagined, I offer you supreme merit. Non-virtues of body, speech, and mind, transgressions of my precepts all. Committed sins beginning last time, all I confess deeply from my heart. In these times of degeneration, you made your life highly meaningful. Renounce all the eight worldly counsel, strive for knowledge and realization. In your extensive accomplishment, I rejoice deeply within my mind. Nama in Dhammakaya clear sky, from clouds of wisdom and compassion. Is rain down vast and profound Dhamma upon us fortunate. I dedicate all of this virtue to the Dhamma only, and especially that the heart teaching of Lord Sandra and forever is ground adorned with perfume and flowers. Mount Meru forward song and imagine and offered as a pure. May all these enjoy this spirit. I send for this jewel mandala to you, my precious Guru. Imetewe te chen chen ris. Rime kiampe wambo jombe. Dimpu mali jomse songwe. Gang chen kepen Suyen Songkang Lozan Drapa Tu Chen Rezi great treasure of objectless combine. Manju Shilon of stainless wings. Vajapani, destroyer of Marazam. Tsongka Pakwan, jewel of Tibetan saint. Lozan Drapa to you. So as we recite the prayer to Lama Tsongkhapa, you imagine from the heart of Lama Tsongkhapa comes three beams of light that merge into one beam of light, and then that light energy enter into you to the top of your head or through your forehead and fills your body with blissful light. And each particle of light is made of golden manjushris. And by visualizing that, you insight, you're intelligent. It helps to increase your intelligence. Manjushri, Lord of sinless wisdom, Vajapani, destroyer of Marazam, Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of Tibetan sage, Lord Sangapa, to you, I pray. And you imagine the three thrones, they are absorbed into the lotus, upward. And then Kyasabje, Kedrubje, they merge into Lama Tsongkhapa. Then Lama Tsongkhapa come to rest on top of your head. And he's inseparable from your root guru. And you imagine that he shrinks in size. So as small as you can comfortably imagine. So imagine him as blissful, bright light to all the enlightened qualities, and then he enters the top of your head and gently travels down. With each millimeter that he moves, it produces bliss, joy in you. And he comes to rest on the lotus, the center of your heart. So you try to imagine this blissful, bright light in your heart, which is infinite love, which is bliss and emptiness. And then you imagine that this blissful light energy becomes bigger and completely pervades your body, mind. And then you lose awareness of your body, like the shape of your body disappears, and it's just one with this pure awareness that now is inseparable from your guru's, Lama Tsongkhapa's pure awareness. So imagine your mind in a nature of light, of bliss, and limitless. And that pure awareness becomes your object of calm abiding. Or we focus on that for 10 minutes. An image that Milarepa gives when we watch the mind like that. Look at the mind like a small child looking at a mural. The small child doesn't say, this is a human, this is a flower, and so forth. It just takes in the general appearance of the mural. So same thing when we watch the mind. So we don't identify individual thoughts or follow them. We just take in the mind in general and we rest on that. Even though we might be aware that some movement happens within the mind, but we don't focus on that. We just focus on the space of awareness. while you rest like that, see if you're too tight or too loose. If you're too loose, the mind becomes dull. And if you're too tight, too crisp, then tension forms in the body. So try to find the middle way where you can rest in that space of awareness. And how you find that middle way is by making the mind more tense and then more loose, and then you find the middle way. Like when you tune a guitar, so while you continue in meditation, you don't block the thought anymore. So normally, probably the sense of I you have right now is a sense of I that is neither inherently existent nor merely labeled. But now if you think, I am meditating, I'm a good meditator. All this meditation was awful. And then if you look at that I, how it appears to be almost something concrete within your mind, how it appears to be independent of your body and independent of your awareness. So that would be the inherent I. So if you start thinking, at the beginning it's just the neutral I that think, but then if you get really involved, then that neutral I turns into an inherent I that thinks. Suddenly it is not just the mind that has thoughts, it's me that thinks. So you have to see the difference and really identify when it is just the mind that has thoughts compared to when me, I think. Or you could also say the mind that has emotion, or me that has emotion. So this stage is very important, because if you don't identify the inherent I, then the meditation on emptiness doesn't work. So you don't meditate on the emptiness of the general I, you meditate on the emptiness of the inherent I. So you must be able to have it there within your mind and have it in a sustained manner, because if it flicks in and out of existence, you cannot really meditate on its emptiness. So you must have this feeling of inherent I in a sustained way. So this is not easy to do. Now, if the inherent I becomes too powerful, like sometimes one says, you have to remember an event where you were afraid or angry or have desire. Now, if the inner eye becomes too powerful, too strong, you cannot meditate on its emptiness either. The wisdom mind becomes too weak and you're overpowered by the ego, by the inherent existent I. And if it's too weak, if the inherent existent I is not present, or go in and out of existence very quickly, again you cannot meditate on its emptiness. So the inherent existent I that you let arise in your mind has to be neither too weak nor too strong. So you can bring up some concern you have in your everyday life, things that preoccupy you today or as preoccupied you yesterday, or your hopes and fear. So you bring that sense of I within your mind. And that sense of I is not just thoughts, memory, emotion. There's an I that is the possessor of those thoughts, emotion, and so forth. And he appears to be there within your space of mind somewhere. So you must be able to bring it forth into your mind and be able to hold it there in a sustained manner, in a continuous manner. And even though you might have thoughts, emotions that feed it, that nourish its presence, what you focus on is its presence. And you make it so vivid that you can almost touch it with your mind. It's really there. Then, while holding this sense of I, say, look, if you exist, you have to be found somewhere. Either within the body or within the stream of consciousness or outside. So here you have to keep this sense of I and put it into different places. So if this sense of I exists, if it's somewhere within the body, then where? So you move this sense of I within your body but each part of the body has more, it can be subdivided infinitely. So you cannot put this sense of I, that is one thing, anywhere within the body. And the mind is a stream of moment of awareness that changes continuously. So this sense of I cannot be fit into any moment of awareness. And outside the body-mind, it cannot exist either, because at least I always arise on the basis of at least one of the aggregates, by the body-mind. So while the I is there, you hold it, and you're not able to fit it anywhere. So while the inherent existent I is there, you realize it's a hallucination. And only then you go into emptiness of the I. And then when you lose it, again you let, within your mind, you create again the presence of your inherent I, your normal persona with his hopes and fear. And again, you try to maintain it in a sustained manner. And again, you try to look, while keeping it there, you look for where it could be, body, mind, outside. But you have to hold, during the whole process, you have to hold him there. And even at the end, when you haven't found it fitting anywhere, you have to hold him there. Then you realize it's a mirage, a hallucination, etc. And then, only then, emptiness happens. And when you arise out of emptiness and you look your sense of I, you discover a new way, a new sense of I. That I is merely designated on the continuum of body-mind. That there's no I in there, there's no inherent I in there, yet you exist. And on that continuum of body-mind, you label I, and it's completely correct. By the merit of this virtue, may I become a Buddha and lead all living beings into that enlightened state. May the precious Bodhicitta, not yet born, arise and grow, and may that born not decline, but increase more and more. In the snowy mountain paradise, you're the source of all happiness and good. Powerful Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezig, please remain until samsara ends. Savior of the snowlands teachings and beings, you clarify the path that unifies emptiness and compassion. Lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso, may all your wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Fearless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious one, Shravaka, Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and son, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here now. Holding and spreading the Buddhist precious and complete teaching, through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teaching, the sole gateway to which all benefit and happiness emerge. And for other living beings, you suddenly depart to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of Bodhicitta of the children of the victorious one, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. All right, thank you very much. If you have any question, you're welcome. Otherwise, goodbye. See you next week.
Thank you.
I had some questions. Let's see, where are we? Did I lose you?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So let's see. So as far as the inherently existing self, is our Buddha nature or inherent? I mean, is that inherent?
No.
Okay, I thought you'd say so.
No.
Okay, can you talk a little more about that? I mean, that's our innate nature.
It's our innate nature, yes. So it's pure awareness, but that pure awareness is also empty of inherent existence.
I see. And
but
then
you go in stages. You see, you go in stages. So you go to more subtle level of consciousness, and then that more subtle level of consciousness, you see it as empty of inherent existence.
okay. And then so you follow the merely labeled I. Let's see, I'm trying to get back to this. Helps us perform our functions with the aggregates in the body and mind. And it can, and we carry that. We don't really carry that merely labeled I onto enlightenment, right? Because we keep changing our clothes in the form of our body. Isn't that right?
But the merely labeled I is merely imputed on the continuity of the consciousness. So that one exists forever.
Oh, is that it? Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting. Because I mean, we look, I don't expect to have this body next lifetime. I expect to look different and go through a whole set of problems unless I really step up the pace, but I love it that you opened up the world of possibility to not just believe it's going to take forever. That's wonderful. Thank you for that. We could do this, let's go team.
Yes, I think that's what Maitreya's text tells you, you have to have this faith that you can do it, and we often don't have that.
Yeah.
We say on one side, we say yes, but on the other side, we believe no. Our inner nature is strange. You see how we don't really believe we can do it, even though we pretend on another side of us, say, no, I cannot. And that's why we relax. Say, oh, it's going to take a very long time, so it's not point of making too much effort because I cannot really do it in this life, So we kind of undermine our potential because we don't really deeply believe we can do it. Right? We don't deeply try to be in touch with our subtle, pure nature,
We got to step on the cloud, get there. What do you call, what was the name of this text?
The Uttara Tantra Shastra by Maitreya Buddha. In English is the Sublime Continuum of the Mahayana.
Thank you.
I think Geshe Dakpa teaches it at the moment. I think Geshe Dakpa or Kenzo Rinpoche Losang Jampa teaches it in San Francisco. I think once a week or once a month. I don't know exactly.
Who does? Who?
Or Geshe in California.
And where is that? In San Francisco, what's the name of it?
Yeah, Sechen Ling, at Sechen Ling.
Sechen Ling?
Yeah, it's the center in San Francisco.
Thank you.
Anyway, there's plenty of text, translation and commentary on it you can read. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
I just want to make a comment. I am just so delighted, I guess is the word. I know that every teacher has their own set of vocabulary and their own method of helping to lead students into an experience of themselves. And I was impressed with perhaps almost getting a taste of this balance between this wisdom awareness and the a sense of what the inherent I is. Flipping very quickly back and forth and maybe not completely understanding either one, but a small taste of it, which just I wanted to thank you.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, you see, I think one mistake that one easily make is that one finds the inherent I and then looks for it in different places, but one let go of the inherent I. You see, you say you identify the inherent I, and then you look for it in the body mind, but you have let go the inherent I. You see, so you have to keep, the challenge is to keep him there while you look for it. You see, and even at the end, when you have realized that he's nowhere to be found, you still have to keep him there for a while by realizing that even though he's there, it's a hallucination. And it's that has this impact on your mind, that in everyday life when he's there, you have that experience that even though he's there, he's not really there, right? Well, so that's the challenge. So that's why you see how concentration is important, how calm abiding is important. So to be able to do that meditation, you need to have a certain level of control over your mind to bring about different experience within your mind and be able to hold them there. If your mind jumps around all the time, it's difficult to do this kind of meditation, right? Mm. And then if you don't get any experience, if you do that for years and years and years, you get discouraged because it just stays intellectual. You know, it doesn't turn into any experience.
This was a very interesting time for me because I'm here visiting and helping my sister who just had surgery, and their house is not really set up for me to do this Zoom. Mm-hmm. I was in a room to begin with that became hotter and hotter and hotter with no air conditioning. And I was so bothered by it that during the meditation, I really walked upstairs into a cooler room. And I think it actually helped me because I let go of trying so hard, being so tight with it. And I allowed myself to just see what would happen if I listened. And so that was a good experience too, of realizing that I was holding too tight, wanting too much.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
So thank you.
You're welcome. Alison?
Venerable René, thank you. So I love being encouraged that this is doable, you know, but equally, how do I find the balance with the many great teachers, including His Holiness Dalai Lama, who encourages us to take a very long-term approach and that this will take many lifetimes and don't be impatient and whatever. We've all heard those teachings as well.
Yeah, we have to find, I think we have to combine both, right? So in case we don't make it, we're still on the long time path, you know, it's not either or, you know, we can do both together. But I think they also always gives us a sense of urgency, not to be complacent and, not to put to tomorrow what you can do today. So I think as a meditator, as a meditator, you have to, especially with Tantra, you have to believe that you can do it in this life, right? And you have to try your best, So I think, yeah.
I suppose I once asked Lama Zopa about one of these almost Zen conundrums with two different types of teachings. And he said, well, just do whatever's better for your mind.
Yeah.
It's that sense of responsibility. There's moments when it's really helpful to believe that we can do it in this life. And there's moments when it's helpful to be more humble about what we can achieve.
It's true. Yeah, I think it's a good approach. Yeah, it's a good approach. But I think this belief that I can do it, I think is very important, because otherwise, I say, maybe next life or the life after, even though we are in that stream, right? But
well, it encourages the laziness of doubt, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think this maybe not believing I can become omniscient, right now, but that I can test my pure inner nature, you see, and then that experience can be many, many different layers, right? But at least believing that I have this pure nature in me and I can touch it, I can experience it, I can live that. So I think that otherwise, you see, if one doesn't have that sensation, one finds an excuse to do all these other activities, instead of looking for this treasure inside, we look for treasures outside where it's not found, right? So I think psychologically there's something there, so, and I think also being busy helping other people can be two ways. It can be out of love, compassion, bodhicitta, but it can also be an excuse of not doing this inner work, so pretending, or because, it's an excuse not to do the inner work because I'm busy helping others, right? So there, each one has to, it's a fine line, and psychologically, sometimes one is on the good side and sometimes one is on the other side, right?
Thank you very much.
Scott?
Yeah, hi, Venerable René. Thank you for the teaching. And I've been meditating with this method many years that you've taught us, and it's really beneficial. So thanks. My question is about the disparity between the scholarly presentation of these three senses of eye and the experience. Because when you read about these three eyes, I went and did a little more study last couple of weeks. It says very, very clearly the merely labeled eye can only be experienced by an enlightened being, by a Buddha, right? Like in the George Dreyfus or in the His Holiness in the Gelug Kagyu tradition. And so I wonder if, it seems, and I've had little debates sometimes with Dharma friends who take issue with this experiential approach, because they say, well, of course you can't experience a merely labeled eye because you have to be enlightened to experience it.
No.
Yeah, is that wrong? What do you think?
You don't need to be enlightened to experience the merely labeled eye. You have to have an insight into emptiness according to Madhyamika.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you have to go through the process of not finding the inherent existent I. And then when you come out of that insight and you look how the I exists, you realize that it's merely labeled.
Mm-hmm.
So usually to have the direct experience, you need to be on the path of seeing, right? Have a direct experience of emptiness. But already before that, even it's not as powerful, you can experience that the I is merely labeled on the body and mind. by going through that process of not finding the inherent existent I, and then coming out of that insight, you check how does the I then exist. And then you realize it's merely imputed on the stream of body-mind. So no, not only Buddha, even, any being that's on the path of seeing above has that experience. And even before we can have some flavor of that, we don't have the full experience, but we have some flavor of it, even now, at our level.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly has been my encouraging experience, with under your study. But the text and some of these debates with other Dharma friends, I think it's like a subtle form of discouragement, like, no, only a Buddha can experience it. Like, well, how do we get there?
Yeah. No, it's not like that.
Thank you.
Venerable René, thank you very much for teachings and share with us your experience. I have a question about this different approach of meditating on affirming negation and not affirming negation, like different traditions do. So I thought to see your opinion. You think are we coming to the same conclusion, or it's kind of different between affirming negation and not affirming negation? Because I saw in a text of Geshe Zopa from Deer Park, he was mentioning Lama Tsongkhapa was saying that even yogacharyas that meditate on affirming negation, they because they put a lot of emphasis on dependent rising, they come to kind of extraordinary results. So I thought it's kind of impressive that he get that remark on like affirming negation. So I thought to hear from you your thoughts.
It seems that in other tradition, they put more emphasis on the mind that focus on emptiness. And in the Gelugpa, Lama Tsongkhapa's tradition, one focus more on the object of emptiness. So in that experience of direct experience of emptiness, you have two things. You have the awareness that focus the awareness and the emptiness that is the object of that awareness. So Kagyu Nima put more emphasis on the awareness that perceives emptiness, and Lama Tsongkhapa put more emphasis on the emptiness that is observed by that awareness, even though they are non-dual. So it's a question of where you put the emphasis on. So if you put the emphasis on the awareness that focus on emptiness, then that's an affirming negation, right? And because that it's the awareness that is aware of emptiness, it's a thing, right? So, and then if you put the emphasis on the emptiness, then it's a non-affirming negation because it's only empty, right? But these two are inseparable in experience, in the direct experience. So I think that language difference comes depending on the approach in meditation, and then how the philosopher of that tradition explained things.
So it's only the explanation in the words. In the actual experience, it could be actually the same.
You see, this debate goes on since hundreds of years. So some yogis would say it comes to the same, and some would say it doesn't come to the same. But I think at our level, that is so subtle and so advanced, we don't need to worry so much about it. I think at our level, we are not able to distinguish this subtle difference. So certain Dalai Lamas thought it came to the same, and certain Dalai Lamas said it didn't come to the same. So even in the same stream of consciousness of one enlightened being, one manifestation said this and another manifestation said other thing. So I think it depends the context, and I wouldn't worry so much about it at that stage, just go on, and at some point it becomes clear. I had another insight and I lost it now. So, for example, in Gelug Kagyu, one put more emphasis on making the mind subtle. You see, on going from the ordinary mind. So, to make the mind subtle, right? So, and that doesn't need any conceptuality, right? You don't need to analyze anything. So you don't use conceptual thoughts, you don't analyze. So you just make the mind more and more subtle to go to the more refined, subtle mind of clear light. And from their perspective, when you reach this more subtle mind of clear light, that mind naturally recognizes emptiness. You don't need to make much effort for that subtle mind to realize emptiness. So that would be Kagyu Nyingma approach. In the Gelug, Lama Tsongkhapa's approach, he said that's not enough. You see, you make the mind more subtle, but that more subtle mind you have experienced each time you died, and it hasn't helped you to reach enlightenment. Right? So from Lama Tsongkhapa's perspective, the more subtle mind of clear needs to cognize emptiness as an object. Right? So that is the subtle difference between Lama Tsongkhapa's approach and the yogis of other tradition. And so if you would experience the more subtle mind of clear light, at our level, like a Dzogchen master or a Mahamudra master, that experience is amazing. You have clairvoyance, you have all these qualities, infinite love and so forth. So, but you see, is that enlightenment or is that not yet enlightenment? Are there still some subtle obscuration that need to be removed? You see, so from our level as ordinary being, we are not able to distinguish that, right? So we rely on the authority of these great masters. And hopefully one day we can see by ourselves, these subtle distinctions. So that's how I approach, that problem.
I'm not sure if another question just come up. Is it time?
Yeah, it's just last one. Okay.
Okay. The question about the bhumis. So in Gelug tradition, like when it's become direct perception, it's still a lot of bhumis. But if they have very clear, very subtle mind and they realize emptiness, so they kind of jump through many bhumis ahead, or how it's not like that. Like the realization of enlightenment come then more direct.
Well, if you compare the sutra path and the tantric path, so in the sutra you have the 5 stage and the 10 bhumis. Mm-hmm. In tantra, you have a different layout. You have the generations, the gross generation stage and subtle generation stage. And then you have the mind, the body isolation, speech isolation, mind isolation, illusory body, clear light, and the union of clear light and illusory body. So the map is a little bit different, the tantric path and the sutra path. But then you have texts that say where they meet, So for example, when you have the mind of clear light, so that would compare to the path of seeing on the sutra path, right? So there's correlation at different levels and different texts explain that, right? So the tantric path becomes very quick once you reach what's called the path of seeing. So what in the sutra is the path of seeing, you still have 2 countless great aeons to reach Buddhahood. In Tantra, when you reach the path of seeing, or you experience the mind of clear light, that's your last life. So you pass the two countless great aeons within a few years. because the mind, the subtle mind of clear light that meditates on emptiness is much more refined than the ordinary mind when meditating on emptiness. And it's not a dualistic mind, subject and object. So the experience becomes much more powerful. And then when you come out of that mind of clear light, more subtle mind of clear light, you come out of that with the illusory body. And that illusory body can multiply and infinitely, so it can create the merit side of the path very quickly. So that's why how it's explained, the difference in Tantra, why Tantra is so much quicker than the Sutra path. Right?
Thank you very much.
So it's good to read texts that compare these stages. You see, in ground and path, you have Sutra and Tantra ground and path. And then you have these texts that usually at the end of the ground and path, you have a few pages that compare, that makes the correlation, which level compares to the other text. So I don't have a name that, there's a commentary by Kirti Senchab Rinpoche and a few other lamas. I don't have one that comes to my mind now. So if you're interested, read that. I think it's interesting. Also, this text, for example, even in Gelug Kagyu Tradition of Mahamudra, Panchen Losang Shogye Gyatsen explained the correlation between the 5 path 10 bhumis from the sutra explanation with the 4 yogas of the Mahamudra, as explained in the Kagyu tradition. So where they correlate, so it's interesting. Yeah, it helps to understand a little bit one's experience. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Hope you're all doing well, and see you maybe next week. Okay.